Coming up on Bridge City News, it was a day that changed the world forever. We reflect on those who lost their lives in the September 11th terrorist attacks. Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh responds to a call in our city to defund the police. And the province has a plan to clear the surgery backlog by the year 2023. We will explain how.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. It was 19 years ago today that close to 3,000 people lost their lives in the September 11th terrorist attacks. More people died that day than at Pearl Harbor. September the 11th, 2001 is a day that many say changed the world forever. Do you remember where you were?
Boom! Oh, man. There was a loud crashing sound, and then there was a pause for about a split second, and then there was like a scream or two, and then everyone just ran. Everybody. There was mass chaos.
Screen, the smoke, the black smoke and fire.
Hijacked, and there are indications that it may have been a Boeing 767 out of Boston.
Like a train rumbling for maybe like 35 seconds, and then there was like this pause, and then boom, hit with all the dust, and it was black. I mean, pitch black. I don't know anybody could have survived being on the street at that time.
Right there. Right there.
You can see the black smoke billowing out of the side of the Pentagon. It continues to billow out and cover much of the skyline here along the area, drifting along the Potomac River, casting a haze all over the Pentagon area.
It didn't look like there was a plane at all. It was just obliterated when it hit the ground.
He told me he was putting a plan together that he and others were going to take back the airplane. And he said, you know, Dina, I think we can do it. It's up to us.
And we will strive now very hard to save as many people as possible and to send a message that the city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists.
All of the suspects right now that I know that the U.S. is looking at are in the Middle East. And frankly, we have to put Osama bin Laden at the top of the list.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
We've got to do something now and do it immediately. I mean, we're entitled to some semblance of security, some semblance of rationality, and I think that all died in New York. I've been in the city for years, and I've never heard it as silent and as sad as I've heard it tonight. This city is in shock, and unless you're here tonight, you don't quite comprehend it.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence was in New York today. He spoke with a mournful crowd at the Tunnel to the Towers Foundation ceremony. He read from Psalm 23 and prayed that God would comfort all of those who were affected by that tragic day.
In memory of the heroes that were forged that day, and heroes forged on battlefields ever since. And for the families, loved ones, and friends they left behind. I pray these ancient words will comfort your hearts.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau paid tribute to the victims of the September 11th terrorist attacks. Trudeau said in a Facebook post, "It's a day many of us will never forget. 19 years ago, the deadliest terrorist attacks in American history claimed nearly 3,000 innocent lives, including 24 Canadians. As we remember them today, we also stand in solidarity with all of those whose lives were forever changed." And to the firefighters, police officers, military personnel, paramedics, and everyone who ran toward danger that day, thank you. Amidst the horror, you showed incredible courage, heroism, and selflessness, as first responders do every single day. Today, many honor the thousands of lives that were lost on 9/11. Here in Lethbridge, BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with those on where they were when they first heard the devastating news.
When I heard about 9/11, I was in my last year of high school, and terrible day. I remember sitting in every class, and that's all we watched all day was the complete news coverage and the disaster of what had happened that day. The devastation on people's faces. That was the biggest thing that stuck out to me that day.
That morning I was driving from Raymond to Lethbridge to go to a class in the multimedia wing at the college, actually. And I heard the first tower falling, and by the time I got to the parking lot, the second tower had fallen. It was a pretty horrible thing. The repeated watching the second tower collapse over and over again, every channel that we were on, just resonated very loudly and hard with disbelief, actually, that it was real.
At the time of 9/11, I was in daycare, and I don't remember anything from like those years, but more recently I've been learning about it in school and on my own and just in general, and it was terrible. It was just a catastrophe.
I'm a travel agent, and I used to bring seniors out of Calgary at Harvest and Christmas to see what was going on in the country. And the day after 9/11, I was having a tour, bringing a tour out from the city, and one person didn't join us because they couldn't fly from New York the day before because of the disaster.
Calls to defund the police have been made in Calgary, Edmonton, and even here in Lethbridge. Alberta Justice Minister Casey Madju recently sent a letter to both Calgary and Edmonton mayors stating that defunding the police would be misguided and in no way helps minorities in their communities. New Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh explained what defunding the police would look like in Lethbridge.
The discussions ought to be, first of all, what do we mean by that? Because I haven't really seen a clear definition of what even it means. And also, are we in a position to even have the discussions? Our programs, the capacity is built behind to even have those discussions. I think that's the first step, is starting from that point and then moving the discussions up. I believe I cannot see the world without the police in any shape or form. But give you an analogy, if we were to shut down this office for the next 2 months and just have people deal with the situation on their own, I don't think that's the reality we are facing today. But maybe the concept could be achieved, but it takes significant amount of resources and discussions, funding, capacity built behind it to even having to start those discussions.
The Alberta government is studying the benefits and costs involved of a proposed provincial police force that could replace our RCMP. A contractor will be hired to study the feasibility of a possible transition. An executive manager with a salary of up to $164,000 would oversee a team that is to provide an evidence-based assessment of the concept. The idea came from the government's Fair Deal panel in June, which recommended a new provincial police force. The panel said the RCMP had become too bureaucratic and smaller communities are allegedly not getting enough frontline officers. Police in Victoria, BC say 6 men in their 20s from Calgary have been arrested after an alleged kidnapping and assault with a weapon. Officers say they were called to a loud domestic disturbance Monday night and discovered something else had occurred. They say a man was assaulted with a weapon, kidnapped from the suite, and driven outside of Victoria. They say the assault with weapons continued in the vehicle until the man was able to escape. He then called police and received treatment in hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. Raising a child with a disability can be a challenge at the best of times. Ask any parent who's going through it. Dr. Edna Jokora Assam is the chair of the Family Support for Children with Disabilities. She has a daughter who has Down syndrome. Dr. Edna says what has really helped her through her journey is relying on God's word.
Having a child with challenges drives you to ask questions. And if you don't look at the right place for the answers to those questions, your faith can be shaken And that was what happened to me, because initially I was looking for answers. And then I realized that it's not a bad thing. I mean, having a child with needs is not a curse. You didn't do anything wrong. That is just who they are. And so when you have that understanding by getting into the Word and knowing the Word, it really, really helps.
Dr. Edna will also discuss what support programs have been available through this pandemic. That's coming up later in our program. The Lethbridge father of former Humboldt Bronco Logan Boulay, Toby Boulay, posted a message on social media recently thanking Saskatchewan for bringing forth the province's first ever online organ and tissue registry. The Green Shirt Day organizer spoke about how proud he is of Saskatchewan for being proactive in order to help save lives.
I just like to thank you to the people of Saskatchewan, the government of Saskatchewan, for their forward thinking, and it's not catching up, it's just thank you. And the fact that because people of Saskatchewan now are registering, it's awesome. Because before it was a red sticker, a heart on your driver's license. You got your license renewed, they gave you a sticker, you put on your license, and you hope like heck that if you're in a crash, they could find your wallet. But we didn't get Logan's wallet till about 2 weeks after the crash. So if that had been the case, it wouldn't have worked. So the fact that they've gone online and they're allowing Saskatchewan people to register, and Saskatchewan people are registering to support the cause, it's awesome.
A recent poll revealed that 90% of Canadians support organ donation, but only 23% have actually registered their intent to donate. Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the surgical backlog in our province should be cleared up by the year 2023. The province announced today that new and existing chartered surgical facilities will be expanded to help clear a backlog of surgeries by 88%. The expansion is expected to occur in both urban and rural communities across the province.
You'll see more surgeries scheduled in the evenings and weekends, and other process changes like pooled referrals to groups of surgeons and groups of clinics. We'll support clinicians in working to make sure that every patient gets the most appropriate care, not just faster care. So, for example, more teams that assess patients and help them choose surgery versus non-surgical care. You'll see construction with $100 million in new investments to renovate and build new operating rooms in hospitals across the province.
Shandro also added that there will be no cost to patients who are having surgeries. A Calgary doctor says he's worried that Alberta's homeless shelters will not have enough space to keep everyone safe once the cold weather hits. Dr. Richard Musto is a retired public health officer who has been volunteering to help the most vulnerable during the pandemic. He says there is not enough space for people to be much more than inches apart during the peak of winter, and that the need for more space is urgent. The province's shelter guideline says 1 meter of space between beds, cots, or mats in shelters is acceptable. After recent alleged child abduction attempts in Lethbridge and increased awareness of child trafficking around the world, a local mixed martial arts fighter is doing something to literally combat it. Lee Mien, owner of the Canadian Martial Arts Centre, is organizing a free workshop for ages 4 and up to empower kids to prevent abduction. He says the world is not as safe as it used to be, and children need to learn how to defend themselves.
You can see it all over the news now, stuff that's being suppressed and stuff that's actually out there on the pedophilia and the trafficking of children. And I just think it's horrific, and we got to do something about it. And again, if we don't know about it, we need to educate ourselves. It's the real pandemic, and that's something we have to deal with. And you know, being a martial artist, and my goal is to train the children to be safe, learn how to protect themselves, prevent bullying. And this is another one of those lines. We have to teach our children how to do things to protect themselves in a violent situation.
Now, Mien's workshop sold out within an hour of it being advertised. He says he plans to organize more workshops in the future. Now, the Raptors enter tonight 3-2 all-time in Game 7s, and the situation going into tonight's game is all too similar to the one that they were in last year against the Sixers, but this time without star forward Kawhi Leonard. The severe weather that many areas of Alberta received so far this year translated to close to $2 billion in damage. Now, that's according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, which says it is processing close to 100,000 claims ranging from flood to hail to fire damage. A storm which hit Calgary, Drumheller, and Airdrie in July topped $135 million with over 10,000 claims. The June hailstorm, which hit Calgary, resulted in $1.2 billion in damage. According to the Bureau, flooding in Fort McMurray caused $522 million in damage. Parts of British Columbia are blanketed in wildfire smoke, and health warnings still stand. The Weather Office says smoky skies will continue for most of Vancouver Island, along with the inner south coast and east of the Kootenay region. The advisory says forecast models over the next 24 to 48 hours show the potential for long-range transport of smoke from the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Environment Canada's Air Quality Health Index lists air quality at moderate to high risk for many parts of southern BC. It is official. Quebec health officials have announced that karaoke bars and other public venues have been banned because of the risk of spreading COVID-19. All bar owners will be required to keep a registry of customers to permit contact tracing. Meanwhile, next door in Ontario, there's been a bit of a spike in that province. Health officials say there have been 213 new cases of COVID-19 reported today. That's the most since June. As for Alberta's COVID numbers, there were 111 new confirmed cases, bringing the total number of active cases to 1,444. The majority of new infections are located in the Edmonton zone. Here in the South Zone, only 3 people tested positive, including a single case in Lethbridge, Lethbridge County, and the county of 40 Mile. Out of the province's 5 health zones, our zone, the South Zone, has the smallest number of active cases at just 38. Our province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, spoke about the 3 schools in our province where there's a COVID-19 outbreak, including Chinook High School here in Lethbridge. Hinshaw says despite some people coming down with the virus, our schools are still a safe place for our kids.
I want to reinforce that these schools are not a risk to their communities, and those still attending are not at greater risk of exposure. Anyone potentially exposed has been contacted and is self-isolating.
It is Friday. That means it's time for another Movie Mill Minute. This week, Len Binning talks about more great family movies playing at the Mill, including Dr. Dolittle and Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.
J.K. Rowling returns with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a bit of a prequel to the Harry Potter series set in the early 1920s in New York City, stars Eddie Redmayne. A coming-of-age story, part comedy, part drama. A young boy who wants to become a chef has a very unique home life. His mother is Israeli, his father is Palestinian, and together with the grandparents, he's got a chaotic home life to deal with.
It's a ramen taco. It's a taco with ramen noodles.
Terrible. You are mixing fusion with confusion. Dolittle, a family-friendly film about the doctor who speaks with animals. It stars Robert Downey Jr. After years in seclusion, he now must try to find a cure for the Queen, who has become very ill.
Hello, Patty. Hello, lunch. What a wonderful world. Somehow, we just belong together.
Great movies at the Mill once again. Hey, don't put away the sunscreen just yet. A gorgeous weekend is shaping up weather-wise. Complete weather details, including the long-range forecast, are coming up. It was another great day for an outdoor picnic or firing up the barbecue today. Lots of sunshine and warm temperatures. Tonight, it should be mainly clear with a low near 9. Tomorrow, mainly sunny with a high expected near 27. A sunny Sunday is shaping up with a high near 25. Monday, a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 28. Slightly cooler under a cloudy sky with 23 degrees on Tuesday. A good chance of showers and 14 degrees for Wednesday. Thursday, mainly cloudy with a high near 16. Looking at the ALMANAC, the average high for this time of year is 21 degrees with an average low of 6. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1968 at 31 degrees, and our record low was a chilly -3 in 1950. Sunrise was at 7:02, sunset at 7:53. Looking across the country now, the special air quality statement continues on the West Coast due to the wildfire smoke in the Pacific Northwest. It'll be smoky, cloudy, and 21 in Victoria tomorrow, smoke, cloudy, and 22 degrees for Vancouver. It'll be mainly sunny and 20 degrees in Calgary on Saturday, showers and 12 for Edmonton. Just a few clouds and 21 degrees for Regina. Overcast and 16 for Saskatoon tomorrow. It'll be mainly sunny and 22 degrees in Winnipeg. Expect increasing clouds and 20 in Toronto. Sunny and 21 degrees in both Ottawa and Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, it'll be partly cloudy and 20 in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Sunny and 20 degrees in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Mainly sunny and 18 in Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect lots of sunshine and a high near 50 degrees for tomorrow. For the second time this month, Hyundai is telling some SUV owners to park outside because an electrical short in a computer can cause vehicles to catch fire. The Korean automakers were calling around 180,000 2019 through 2021 Tucsons to fix the problem. The company says corrosion can cause a short circuit in defective anti-lock brake circuit boards that can start a fire. Hyundai says it knows of a dozen engine fires from the problem, but no injuries. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says close to $1 billion of mortgage payments were deferred during the pandemic. It is based on Equifax Canada's estimate that the average monthly mortgage payment in Canada is $1,333. CMHC says it expects less Canadians will get ahead of their mortgage payments this year. By the end of the second quarter, not many were defaulting on their mortgages, but CMHC says it is expecting a rise in delinquent mortgages as deferral programs come to an end this fall. Stats Canada says Canadians owed $1.58 in credit market debt for every dollar of disposable income in the second quarter of this year. Credit market debt includes consumer credit, mortgage, and non-mortgage loans. The agency for the quarter household credit market debt as a proportion to household disposable income at 158%, and it's lower than the 175% in the first quarter. StatsCan points out payment deferrals related to the pandemic redacted the principal paid in the second quarter. A Canadian tech firm made its official debut on the New York Stock Exchange today. Lightspeed POS is testing the appetites of the U.S. markets. Lightspeed shares open at $32 US after underwriters priced them at $30.50 in a public offering in the first hour of trading. The Montreal-based company is looking to raise $305 million from the share offering to invest in its cloud technology business, which is designed to help small businesses accept payments. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 37 points on the day to finish at 16,222. The Dow was up 131 points to 27,665. The S&P 500 was up 1 point to 3340, and the Nasdaq was down 66 points to 10,853. Oil was up 3 cents to 37.33 per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to 2.25. Gold was down 5.55 to 19.40.55 an ounce, and silver was down 15 cents to 26.73 an ounce. Wheat is at $230 per metric ton, barley's at $225, canola is at $4.80, and corn is at $242 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 43 cents to 105.53, feeder cattle were up 98 cents to 140.58, and lean hogs were up 2.20 to 66.58. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to 75.89 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, it was 19 years ago today that almost 3,000 people lost their lives in the September 11th terrorist attacks. More people died that day than at Pearl Harbor. September the 11th, 2001 is a day many say changed the world forever. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took to Facebook and said, "As we remember them today, we also stand in solidarity with all of those whose lives were changed forever. And to the firefighters, police officers, military personnel, paramedics, and everyone who ran toward danger that day, thank you." Being a parent of a child who has special needs can be a real challenge. Throw in a pandemic, and it can be even tougher. Up next, I chat with Dr. Edna Giacoto-Assem, who talks about her challenges raising a child with Down syndrome. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come and enjoy an afternoon of Japanese culture at the Nikayuko Japanese Garden as they welcome the Lethbridge Community TAIKO Association for an exciting performance on Saturday, September 12th at 1 p.m. Price of the performance is included with admission. For details, visit nikayuko.com. The Word on the Street Lethbridge Book and Magazine Festival is taking place September 18th and 19th as an online event. In celebration of reading and literacy with the Lethbridge Public Library, this signature event in Southern Alberta presents established and emerging authors, storytellers, workshops, and other online activities. To learn more about the festival, featured authors, and ways to get involved, visit thewordonthestreet.ca/Lethbridge. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. The museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. Mobility scooters are available to guests by donation. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Raising a child with disabilities comes with challenges and victories. Throw in a global pandemic, and those challenges increase exponentially. Joining me now today is Dr. Edna Jakoto SM. She's the Chair of Family Support for Children with Disabilities and a proud mom of 4 daughters, one of whom has Down syndrome and just turned 17. Dr. Edna Jakoto SM, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you, Hal. I'm happy to be here.
Now, Edna, one of your daughters is actually home from high school because of a recent outbreak here in Lethbridge.
Yes, she is. We got the text and the email last night, and so we had to scramble to get in touch with 811 to try to book a test for her. And the school has been amazing. They phoned right away to find out if everything was okay, and they just gave us the details. And then they phoned again today just to make sure that everything was fine and how schooling is going to roll out. But we are not quite sure yet because they are ready to teach and everything is online for her, but we have to be with her when she's studying. But since she's supposed to be in isolation, we are not quite sure how that's going to look like right now. So we still have to work on the details about how to be able to support her. She has her EA ready to go, but it's our end that we are trying to work out the details.
Now let's discuss parenting a child who has a disability or is differently abled. Tell me about this journey, what it's been like for you and your family.
I think initially was a bit of a surprise because we didn't know that we're going to have her with the disability. But I think that, with time, you get to understand more about the condition. And then you learn to appreciate just the strengths that she has. But I'm not going to say that it's been an easy journey. It's a challenging journey. It stretches you as an adult. It stretches you as a human being. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, when you were told that your daughter had Down syndrome, what were your thoughts and feelings about it initially?
I think it was shock because we didn't know, and fears about how life was going to be like because I didn't know much about Down syndrome at the time. But then as time went on, we sort of knew that it was going to be okay. We knew it was going to be a lot of work, but we knew that it was going to be okay. Now, let me backtrack a bit. One of the reasons that we found out was that she had a heart condition when she was born because her physical features were not very consistent since she's dark skinned, because most whites who get it here, it's more visible. But because she's dark skinned, you needed to have experience to be able to identify it. So they weren't quite sure, but they suspected because of the heart condition. So once they did the genetic testing and we were clear, that we knew that, okay, we know what we are dealing with now. So it's been lots of up and downs, but I think that we are okay with it, and she's doing amazing well. So.
Now, Edna, you have 4 daughters. What is the family dynamic like? And more importantly, do you see any time in the bathroom?
I like that question. Well, family dynamics. Okay, so our oldest is 21, soon to be 22. And so she has been a really great big sister, and the 2 younger ones will tend to play together, and our daughter, she's the second one. So she's very independent. Let me just put it that way. She's super independent in the sense that she likes to do things by herself, but when she needs help, sometimes she doesn't want to ask, except when she sees a bug, like she sees an ant crawling, then she screams, "Help!" But other than that, yeah.
Now, the COVID-19 measures and restrictions have probably been a challenge for you on many different levels. Now, what have you done to ensure your daughter is safe and is understanding of the situation, your child who has Down syndrome?
Well, we've done several things. First of all, she needed to understand what was going on. Initially, she didn't quite understand why she couldn't go to school. So when schools were shut down, we told her she couldn't go to school. And I think she didn't quite understand. So she likes to get her stuff ready the day before school. So she sets out her clothes and gets her backpack ready the night before school. She even gets out her lunch bag and packs her lunch. So when we told her she couldn't go to school, I think she was a bit confused. And then when we told her that we had to go pick up her stuff from school, she thought she was going back to school. So she decided to pack her lunch bag. And I said, well, yeah, it's not that kind. We are just going to pick up your stuff. So after we came home and they started online schooling, I think she understood that she couldn't go back to school for a while. And so we explained to her, the school explained to her, and we tried to take her out on walks because she couldn't have any programming. We usually hire someone to help us on a private basis, but that person couldn't come into the house because of COVID, and her programming through an agency was cut short too. So we had to get creative in trying to do things just to get her engaged. And that was a bit of a challenge because my husband and I were both working from home. So trying to work from home and then make sure we engage her was a bit of a challenge.
Now, when everything was shut down during the pandemic, were any family support programs available to you and your family?
Yes and no. No, in the sense that she used to go to a program in town every Friday, and that was shut down. They tried Zoom, but it wasn't the same. She just wasn't as engaged as she would have been. And then she was involved in Special Olympics. That was shut down. She couldn't do that too. So everything was taken away, just like everybody else. But I guess with her, it was more challenging because she doesn't talk very much. So we had to constantly try to probe to find out what's going on. And she shut down completely because she likes routine. She knows when she wakes up, she goes to school, comes home, and she has that routine. So she shut down initially. Throughout the summer, she actually didn't want to communicate much. But once the programs opened up a little bit in July, things got a bit better.
What have you heard about other families and how they've been impacted, other families who have disabled children, how they've been impacted by this virus and all of the COVID-19 measures?
I think that the impact comes in, well, depending on the nature of the disability. So if your child has very complex needs, it's obviously more difficult because then you have to get workers in. And so the government was very flexible in allowing parents to try as much as possible to customize their programs because there are regulations in place regarding whom you can hire to work in your home. Family members couldn't help you, but they were very flexible enough in agreeing to allow parents upon request to be able to make those changes so family members could help if people couldn't come into the home to help them.
Now, you are also the chair of the Lethbridge Christian School Parent Council. What support is there for children with disabilities right now?
Okay, so right now, I think that depending on their needs, if the kids are inside the school, they are able to support them. But I'm not quite clear on what is happening with kids who are not at school right now. Yeah, I still have to get clarification on that. But with kids who are in the school, they do have support.
Now, Edna, do you see any potential problems down the road or even right now when it comes to schools and how they've reopened, even during the pandemic?
I think that it's a very difficult situation and a complex one because on one hand, I think schools are good for the mental health of our children because I mean, I could see even firsthand that it really affected my girls because they couldn't socialize with their friends. So that affected them. But on the other hand, we know that when they are exposed to other students, there's a potential to have that outbreak. So um, from my perspective, I think it's a very, very difficult situation, but we cannot live in a society that doesn't have any risks. So provided they are able to manage it, I think I'm okay with it. Personally, I'm okay with them going. But of course, this wouldn't work for every family. There are some parents who would choose to homeschool their kids. And I'm so thankful that in our province, that option exists for parents. So whichever one you choose, they are able to support you.
Let's talk about your daughter who has Down syndrome again for just a moment here, Edna. What kind of independence does she have now that you can really enjoy in life?
Oh my goodness. She can do things by herself, like she can go to the bathroom by herself. She doesn't need anyone to help her to go to the bathroom. When she's coming back from school, we drive her in the morning. When she's coming back, she comes home on the yellow bus. She gets off at her stop most of the time, and then she walks home. She's able to eat on her own. She can navigate the iPad technology more than I can. And those are skills that, like, I am so thankful for that she has those skills.
I mean, like most kids, she probably has hopes for her future. Has she talked to mom and dad about what she'd like to do when she grows up?
She doesn't say very much, so you have to prompt her. So next year she's going to turn 18, which is a big transition year, adult year for her. So we had so many plans in the spring to put in effect just to get her preparing for that stage. But unfortunately, because of COVID, all those plans were cut short. So we have to wait. And then just as things open up and we're ready to get things into motion, she's in isolation. So it's been up and down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride, definitely. Edna, what advice would you offer parents who are struggling with raising a child with a disability?
I think, first of all, you have to see them as any other human being. I think you have to have that perspective that they don't have a deficit. That is just who they are. They have challenges in life. So you have to just accept them as human beings and treat them as human beings. Secondly, you have to see what they have to offer. You know, they may not have certain cognitive skills, they may not have certain physical skills, but maybe a smile. Just look for the good in what they have, because I personally believe that everyone has something to offer and they have something. I mean, she has enriched my life so much. I don't know how my life would have been without her. I've gotten to know lots of people that have made such a big difference that I wouldn't have known but for her. So I would say that just look at the positive, and when you are having a bad day, ask for help. It is so important because the emotional and physical strains of raising a child who has so many challenges, it can be overwhelming, but it's important to know that there is help out there. So you can talk to your caseworker, talk to family members, get a support group around you. And a lot of the groups that, kids with special needs, they have different groups for different kinds of disabilities, if I should put it that way. So reach out to people and talk to people. It may look challenging, but you can overcome. And last of all, just take care of yourself. I think self-care is so important. Just get out, take a walk. It's not expensive. It doesn't cost money to get outside and enjoy the outdoors. So just get out there and enjoy the outdoors. Clear your head and talk to people. Yeah.
Amen to that. Edna, let's also talk about your faith and your relationship with God and how important that is, especially as you navigate through a pandemic and raising a child with a disability.
Oh my goodness. I think that that has been the thing that has gotten me through all the challenges, because it's not easy. And so my faith actually has strengthened me in the sense that when I face challenges, I know that, I may not know what lies ahead, but I can lean on God and know that, He's always there, even when it seems like the sky is falling. He's always there to just see me through whatever challenges that I'm going through. And also, I have a very strong faith family that have been very, very supportive, and that has always helped. And also, I think that um, having a child with challenges drives you to ask questions. And if you don't look at the right place for the answers to those questions, your faith can be shaken. And that was what happened to me, because initially I was looking for answers. And then I realized that it's not a bad thing. I mean, having a child with needs is not a curse. You didn't do anything wrong. That is just who they are. And so when you have that understanding by getting into the word and knowing the word, it really, really helps. So I'll just encourage people that, don't look at the wrong places for answers to your questions. Just make sure that if you're a person of faith, get into your word, because you will never know what you will find every day that will strengthen you. That has always kept me going, because I try to get into the word as much as I can on a daily basis. Sometimes it's just one verse, and we have YouVersion app, right? So you can just look at the verse of the day and just think about it during the day. And that really, really helps.
Amen. Well said. Dr. Edna Jakota Assem, Chair of the Family Support for Children with Disabilities, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Artificial intelligence is a big part of our society. You see the new technology in our phones, hospitals, our vehicles, in so many industries. To talk more about it is Dr. Jeff Zwierink. He's an astrophysicist and a senior research scholar with Reasons to Believe. It's an organization which combines science together with faith, and he joins me via Skype from Los Angeles. Jeff, welcome back to BCN.
It's good to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Now, give me a brief description about the ladder of causation. Now, this helps identify the key steps for an artificial narrow intelligence to move into an artificial general intelligence. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so when I'm thinking artificial intelligence, growing up when I did, this is the HALs, the R2D2s, the things that are sentient, aware of who you are, aware of who they are, and kind of interact in the world. And we've got a lot of AI out there right now, which is this kind of narrow intelligence, which can play a game of chess or figure out what you're saying and ask you or order pizza online for you. And so, but the difference between those are very dramatic, because what all of the AI that we have now basically maps this set of inputs to this set of outputs. And so it's a very basically correlative way of looking at things. It's like, I see this, therefore that means this. And so there's this kind of seeing aspect to it. But if you want to get to what humans do, or that artificial general intelligence, you got to move up to the next higher rung, which is not just seeing the correlations, but actually intervening to make something happen. So, say I want to build a pool in my backyard. I can have it look and say, all right, these are the kinds of pools you could put in there. That would be a correlation type thing. But an intervention would be, say, what happens if I remove a wall from the house? Or what if I take the tree out? And then to move to the next letter of causation, the third rung, it's asking, what if I move from Los Angeles to Canada? How would that impact my building a pool? Because the things that happen in Los Angeles are very different from Canada when it comes to building a pool. So that's kind of imagining what could be beyond what is already known.
Jeff, I used to have a pool in Southern Ontario, man. The amount of work I had to put in that thing, cleaning it every day. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's all I'm saying. Now, AI such as Siri, Alexa, and even Tesla cars are almost eerie in how they respond and interact with us. What rung do these fall on, and how much does AI actually anticipate versus respond to our requests?
Well, all of the AI that's out there that I'm aware of is kind of on that first rung of causation, that they're looking at, again, mapping inputs to outputs. So they're seeing this, and therefore that means this. And there's some algorithm for how they choose between different options, but it's seeing this and correlating with that. So all of the AI that we have is at that level. But what you notice is that it's remarkable how it looks like they're doing something more. It looks like they're anticipating, but in reality, what they're doing is saying, okay, given this input, very complicated algorithm and process of mapping it to an output, but nonetheless, it's just this correlation. Input goes to that output.
I want to talk to you a bit about some concerns I know people have with when it comes to autonomous vehicles. What happens if somebody was to hack into the computer, the system, and actually kidnap somebody, change their whole course, or maybe cause the brakes to fail? I mean, there's so many things can happen if technology fails or if somebody hacks into the system.
No, that's actually a very good point. I mean, when it comes to AI, it is one of these really powerful tools. It can do great goods. It can spot diseases and bad or spots on X-rays far better than people can. It's got that sort of capacity. But the more powerful the tool, the greater good you can do with it, but also the greater damage you can do with it. And so that really calls us as humans to make sure that as we're developing this, we don't just look at the technological side. We also have to look at the ethical and moral side. How do we deal with this powerful tool so that the damage is not caused, but we're actually using it for good?
Now, what are some of the myths or misconceptions associated with artificial intelligence?
I think one of the things that plays out often in that is that we see artificial intelligence, and you mentioned Alexa and Siri, and how it's like they're anticipating and they're learning, and we hear those words and we think very humanly about those. That when I'm talking with you, I hear you saying something, and I think, oh, maybe he's going there. I'm actually thinking, okay, where do I fit into this conversation? What's he trying to do? I'm thinking about it a particular way. Whereas Alexa, Siri, all of the AIs that are out there right now, again, they're just saying, all right, these inputs mean these outputs. They're not trying to consider, what are you doing? Where are you going with this? How can I help? It's really just trying to do what it's programmed to do in that sense. And in that sense, while it is learning, it's not like it's saying, we've been talking this way. Maybe it would be better if we talk this way. That would help us get there better. All it's doing is saying, well, I tried this and this was said, no, it didn't work well. So this worked better. So I'm going to go that way. So it learns in that sense, but it doesn't have that higher level cognition or thinking and saying, hey, what's going on? How do I help accomplish this goal better? Because all it is designed is to do is what it's the goal that it's been programmed to deal with.
Now, we've heard that artificial intelligence can learn, but can it think outside of what it's been programmed in to do? Like, can it look ahead and imagine, or maybe backwards to reflect on what might have been? Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a subtle question, because often, I'll give a little bit more concrete example. I can talk about learning where a ball goes. And so I could say, I know that if it's going with this speed at this angle, I know it's going to land there. And then I could say, I don't know what happens if it's a different speed and a different angle. But as I grow, I recognize, wait a second, there's a formula I can just plug this into. And so now that I know the formula, I can deal with a whole wide range of situations. But even though I'm being able to, quote unquote, learn what's going on in this situation, it's still the same thing. So that's what the AI is doing. It's taking what is in this general programming and saying, okay, I can work in that realm, which is very different, again, than what humans do. Because when I go and play chess, I'm looking to win. But I could go halfway through the game. I could say, you know what? This game has been fun trying to win, but now I'm going to see how long can I play the game. There's nothing that an AI will do at this point where I'll go in there and say, you know what, this goal isn't very good. I'm just going to go a different way. Nothing about AI does that at this point.
If you want to play a long game, maybe try Monopoly or even Risk. That's also pretty long too. Now, with the third rung requiring the ability to imagine something that does not already exist, is there still a possibility that artificial intelligence technology can really advance to that point?
Well, there are people who are developing the mathematics that allows an algorithm or an artificial intelligence to do some of those, not just see, but actually intervene and gather new data to see what might go on, and also to even imagine new scenarios. But the best I understand it at this point is there are aspects that it's going to mimic of human behavior, but it still is not doing it in the way a human does. Because again, what allows the computer to do that, or the AI to do that, is there's just this incredible wealth of data that it can process through and figure out. So it may be able to imagine a new, or get to the place where it says, okay, let's look at an entirely new situation that doesn't exist. Say maybe if I didn't move to California, where would I be today type thing. But it's not going to be able to do that nearly as universally or as generally as humans do, because there's also a relational aspect of the way humans behave. And putting that into a computer, I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes us from a computer. You think of what Spock does, the ultimate logical machine. But ultimately, what we like about Spock is that he behaves rather humanly. He actually engages in a relationship.
Now, even with the vast advances in AI, how does its limitations reveal the uniqueness of humanity?
Well, I think as we begin to think about what is an AGI and how do we get to a general intelligence, what that forces us to do is ask, what is it about humanity that's unique and distinct, and what do we need to do to make a computer do that? It used to be that if we could make, or the thought was, if we could make a computer that could beat humans at chess, that would be a general intelligence, or maybe at poker, or maybe at this. And what we found is that every time we've achieved those goals, we say, all right, we can actually build computers that are far better than humans at chess, or any well-defined game, quite honestly, but they still just approach it very differently. We approach it from a thought process, but we also ask, how do we play into this? So when the computer wins the game of chess, it never says, yeah, that was a great game of chess. It doesn't say anything. It just won the game of chess. Whereas I would be very excited if I could beat a grandmaster playing chess, or my team won the Super Bowl. The AI just doesn't think that way. So there is this distinction in how humans are. We're aware of where we stand in the situation, not just accomplishing tasks like an AI would do.
Yeah, you're right. It'll just say game over. Thanks for playing. Now, what might that uniqueness say about us, where or who we come from, and our purpose in this universe?
Well, I think the fact that an AI doesn't think that way, that we do think that way, leads to the idea that perhaps this is not all there is. If we can imagine worlds outside of our universe, maybe there is a world outside our universe. If our ability to perform tasks is important, but we also are driven to relate to people, maybe we're designed to be relational. And I find that fits very comfortably within Christian theistic thought, that God in and of his being is relational. He's created us in his image. Therefore, we are relational. We're emotional beings. We're social beings. We're also engineer type beings. And so we've got this great wealth of who we are, or the attributes that we share, that ultimately flow from being made in God's image. The point is to something that's far bigger than what we are. And I think as we get closer to creating an AI, we see that AI will not match us, that it's made in our image. We see that we're also made in somebody else's image.
Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, and Bill Gates have expressed concerns in the past about the risk posed by artificial intelligence, perhaps that we may rely on it a little bit too much. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a definite possibility. We seem to, as a people, be driven towards increasing comfort and avoiding hardships and working less. And that tends to lead to giving away things that protect our freedoms and our liberty and our capacity to take care of ourselves and manage new situations. And so the more we become dependent on it, I really do think that's problematic, especially if we're designed to work and be social and conquer and go out and explore this world, which I think, again, that flows out of a Christian worldview.
How about AI potentially taking away people's jobs as well? There's always that concern too.
I think that's somewhat inevitable. And there's a good part and a bad part of that, because there are certain jobs that are dangerous and humans get hurt. And so if we can have AIs do that, but just becomes a lot easier. If your screwdriver breaks, you may be sad, but you go to the store and buy a new screwdriver. If you break an arm and you can't work, that's a bigger deal. So there are aspects of what an AI can do that will help humanity. Again, we have to be careful that we don't kind of have that Wall-E type approach where we want the AI to do everything so that we can just sit back, play our games, watch TV, and enjoy sodas on the couch. That's not healthy for us.
So how do we ensure the goal of keeping AI's impact on society very beneficial?
I think it's incredibly important that as we're developing the technology, we also need to be equally serious about thinking about the ethical, theological, and philosophical ramifications. And I know there are people who've thought about that, and there are people involved in that conversation, but we seem to be kind of driven by what can we do at this point. And I just want to make sure that we're very intentional about making sure we're thinking about, is this a good idea? Do we really want to do this? What does it say about our place? And might we be doing something that ultimately is detrimental to humanity in the way we're developing AI? I think if we can do that, we can use the power that AI will bring by avoiding the consequences that would come by using it improperly.
Dr. Jeff Zwerig, Senior Research Scholar with Reasons to Believe, thanks for joining me today from Los Angeles.
Enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.